National Master James Canty III here with Chess.com, and today we have Game of the Day. With the white pieces, we have Stockfish, and with the black pieces, we have Leela Chess 0. Let's get right into it. Here we go. Okay, e4 and c5. So in a Sicilian, you know it's going to get fun and aggressive and sharp lines when you see a Sicilian. e4, c5, and then there's knight f3 and e6 here. This can transpose to a fringe, a timing off, like almost 4 or 5 different openings from here. Very flexible move. e6, after e6, there's d4. This is the standard as we always see. And after d4, there's c takes d4, knight takes d4, and a6 here, which is the Con Sicilian. In fact, they actually call this the modern Swiss cheese variation. Like, man, the names on some of these openings. But after a6, though, a6 is a very, very strong prophylactic move. It's also strong. It's a preparation move as well. Preparing stuff like b5, stopping knight to b5 here, especially making the weakness with e6. You have a weakness on d6. So the knight can be very, very strong here, especially in these Sveshnikov type lines here where the knight gets to d6 and then goes to b5. So this is a very, very good opening play so far. a6, after a6, there's bishop to d3. We keep developing in every single game. Doesn't matter what opening you're playing, you should be developing those pieces because that's the only way you're going to get some kind of play. After bishop d3, there's g6 here, and this is sort of a controversial move, but actually there's exceptions in chess. The problem here is that when you play e6 and g6, your bishop has to choose a diagonal to sit on. Why are you playing g6? Oh, to put the bishop on g7. Well, then why is it a problem? Well, the problem here is the d6 square. And if I'm able to play something like b3 and bishop a3, now you've chosen the g7 diagonal. I have chosen the a3 diagonal here, and you could be in trouble. You also can't castle. Imagine if I got a knight to d6. That is why a6 is played, because now we can play e6 and g6 and not have to worry about things. e6 helps prepare d5. g6 puts the bishop on the long diagonal. a6 stops the knight from swinging into b5, and we live and going to d6, and there's a lot of trouble. After g6, there's bishop e3. Keep the development going. Nothing too hard here. Simple stuff. Bishop g7, knight c3. Look at this. 4 pieces out. About to castle. In fact, white's doing extremely well here if black doesn't do something immediately. After knight c3, there's d5, pressing the center, striking it immediately. And what white does here, Stockfish says, it's time. Oh, yeah. After you castle, it's game time. That's what we tell students. That's exactly right. And by game time, we mean, hey, we're castled, pieces are out. It's time to attack. It's time to open up lines and diagonals. After castle happens, black says, okay, yeah, I got to get out of the center before I get crushed. So 97, castle's coming. And white says, wait, hold on. Before you castle, hold this real quick. E takes d5. Yeah, please. Yeah, please don't castle. Yeah, because we want to keep the king in the center of the board. And you've seen many games, I'm sure, where when that king stays in the middle of the board, oh, he's in trouble on the double. So after e takes d5 here, well, you were expecting knight takes or pawn takes, which is actually Injamin recommendations as well, and it's completely safe, believe it or not. But after e takes d5, Leela Chess 0 says, you know what? Castle. I'm getting out of the way. Because if you take on e6, your knight's hanging. Your knight is hanging. You're going down a piece. Oh, yeah, you will go down a piece if you take this knight. And Stockfish says, I'm going down a knight all day, all night. Don't care. Take it. I dare you. Now, real quick, let's do a material count. Always keep material count even, or at least know what the score is. What is what? Who took what? What's the material count? So there's a pawn capture. So white's up a pawn. Then we capture 2. So now we're up 2 pawns here. And then bishop takes d4, bam. That's a trade. Okay, cool. Now we're still even on pieces, except queen takes d4. Now black is up a full piece. Yeah, we got 2 pawns, but black's up a full piece now. Except, hold on, here it is, Stockfish, bam. Bishop takes g6, and we in the mix. That's the 3rd pawn, by the way. So how much is that knight actually worth that we just lost? Class, raise your hand. Absolutely. Yep. Come on. Yep. I know you said 3. Absolutely. I hope you said 3 points. But the knight is worth 3. And with the knight being worth 3, we have 3 pawns. So that actually equals the knight there. Now let's see 2 lines here. If queen takes d1, then we have bishop takes f7. And then, of course, king g7. We just don't want to give that back. So after rook takes d1, let's do a quick count here. Let's see what we got. 1, 2, 3 pawns. 4, 5, 6 pawns, 7 pawns versus 1, 2, 3 pawns. So in fact, white's actually up a pawn here, or up a pawn when it comes to the piece count, knight having 3, and then we got the extra here. In fact, white's doing just fine. We have 4 pawns for that piece. Yeah, we're down a piece, but we got 4 pawns for it. So we're doing pretty nice. We're doing pretty nice there. And what happens here, if we trade the rest of these pieces off of the board here, we're going to have lots of chances to queen some of these pawns. I mean, look at this pass. We're already halfway there, more than halfway there. This could be very nice for white. Now, of course, as a human here, it may be harder with practical chances and finding accurate moves, but definitely white can be playing for a win here. Now, knight b to c6 was actually the move chosen by Leela Chess 0 here, and not queen takes d1. So after knight b to d6, well, bishop takes f7, and we still have the same position, except queens are still on the board, but we're up 4 pawns here. Let's see the rest of the game. Bishop takes f7, king g7, and queen h5, and we live, saying, hey, I'm going to just be a little bit annoying. Queen g5, there's really not super threats here. Not anything just yet. In fact, the game was quite equal. Most of the game, it was quite equal. But after queen h5 here, it's just a scary move. We keep the queens on the board. And then you have things like a rook lift or a rover, which means rook up and over, rook to d1, rook d3, rook g3, and that's for me. And GG, right? So queen h5, after queen h5, queen f6, there's rook f to e1, defending the pawn because it was attacked. Now, rook takes f7, we don't care about this. Again, we are up 4 pawns. We have 4 pawns. We're down a piece, but we got 4 pawns for that piece in compensation. So, and the king is looking pretty ugly, so that's definitely enough for compensation-wise. All right, rook f2 e1 defending, knight to d8, saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to attack this one and attack this one. And when you especially after you sacrifice and there's a weak king, many things that you should be doing, especially one of them being keep the attack going. Why on earth would you stop the attack and do something like rook a to d1? I mean, it kind of stops the attack. Not a really terrible move, you know, because you're trying to do the rover, but you could do the rover right now, rook up and over. Or you could do, hey, make threats, knight e4. Let's go. Make some threats here. You got to do something with this queen, queen f5. And then after queen f5 here, you know, there's a lot of moves you can make. There's a lot of possibilities, especially as a human here. There's so many things to think about. Queen h4, maybe knight to g5, maybe queen e2, maybe taking the queen, or playing knight to d6 here, which is a very strong move. And of course, we wanted to trade queens anyway, or we were at least comfortable trading queens early on, especially after bishop takes g6 and then knight b to c6 to follow. No trade of queens, but we're okay trading queens here. After knight to d6, there's queen takes h5, bishop takes h5, and then rook to b8 here. So after rook to b8, we're trying to play b5, maybe get the bishop out, you know, do something. Rook to b8, because it's not that fun. Maybe even going knight to c6 here. So we're going to have some maneuvering. Bishop to g4, defending the e6 pawn, and then b5, there is b5, rook a to d1. And miraculously, like we said before, guys, this is an equal position. Why? Because we got 4 extra pawns to work with here. Once that queen came off, now it's easier for us to make probably some more trades. Maybe keep 1 or 2 pieces on the board, even though we're down a piece. But we got these extra 4 pawns here that are going to help us queen and win the game somehow, some way, is white's idea. Rook a to d1 and then bishop to b7 just to get things out. And this is a premature trade, so we play g3 instead. It's time to push our advantage. We got 4 extra pawns here. So with these 4 extra pawns, it's just time to start pushing them. G3, a bishop to c6, and then h4. Passed pawns must be pushed. This one's not passed, but we're just gaining some space. And then we could also use this as an attack. This one's coming behind it. Let's say we move this bishop back, and then we roll it. Walking the dogs in the park for a stroll. Pretty simple. h4, and then knight to b7. Getting out of the way. Got to trade some pieces, he says. Maybe something like that. And then a nice move from Stockfish, knight f7. Just plugging the square here and also threatening things like maybe even h6, maybe even rook e5 and rook g5. This could be very deadly. Of course, these pieces are on the other side of the board, not helping with the action that's on this side of the board. Knight f7, rook b to c8, just defending. Of course, rook c7 could be a thing, maybe moving the bishop and threatening c2. You got to make a move, though. So rook b to c8 is actually the move from Leela Chess 0. f4, keep expanding, and we're probably going to move this boy back and keep pushing pawns. Rook to c7, there it is, rook c7 just to get some help here. Rook c7, bishop h3, oh yeah, we're trying to get everybody into the party. It's not a party without my boys, says Stockfish here, you know. It's not a party without the boys, right? Bishop h3 and then b4. Okay, b4 is on the board, stopping expansion, maybe especially after c3, you might see something like a5. Black would love to keep trading a few pawns and actually take a few pawns and maybe give a piece back for some of the pawns, because if this gets out of hand, white's going to win all day, every day. After b4, there's rook to d4 here, defending or actually attacking the d4 pawn. f5 and rook g4 are possibilities as well. In fact, white's doing a great job here. Now, fairly still in equal position here. White's not more than like 1 plus 1.5 here, which is still sort of equal in a way. There's still a lot of chess left. There's still a lot of chess, to say the least. Bishop to b5, attacking the c2 pawn, but then he says, go ahead, take it. Take it if you like. Well, let's see what happens if he does take it. I was very curious to see what happens if he captures this, because as a human, I mean, who wouldn't really take this? Of course, you do have to look at what happens on h6 check. We have king g8 and king f6. But rook takes c2 is a very huge possibility, especially if I'm playing black here and I'm like, yo, I'm down 4 pawns. He's trying to queen all of them on me. We need something to do here. So let's see if we can take some of these pawns and maybe even queen ourselves. After rook takes c2, we have h6 and king g6. And then after king g6, you have g4. So g4 is extremely scary. King f6 and g5. And we just getting very live over here, right? King to g6, knight e5 check. This is ridiculous. And then after king h5, it feels like he's getting mated, right? Not just yet, but very close. Rook e3 threatening bishop g4 and rook h5 mate. And we great. Big boy moves here from a big engine like Stockfish. So after h5, though, there was bishop to e8, just saying, hey, you know what? h6 is going to be annoying. I see what you're doing. We got to get rid of your pieces right now. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. After bishop e8, well, okay, I might be a little bit too late. h6, king g6, and here we go. f5, and we live. Now, I want you guys to ask yourself and actually answer this question. King f6 was the game move, but what happens on knight takes f5? Pause the video real quick and give me the line, or of course you give yourself the line, put it in the comments below. What is the line here after knight takes f5? Here it is, guys. Bishop takes f5 and we live. King takes, okay. Rook f4 could be cool, but rook f1 is just a little bit better. Rook f1, and you have two options here, king takes or king g6. Let's go king g6 first. After king g6, rook g4 for the score. King h5, and then rook g5, and we live. Mate and we great, baby. That's a game right there. Nasty. So let's go back and maybe king takes e6. King takes e6. Well, okay, knight g5. You got two moves, king e5 or king e7. In fact, king e5 looks cool, but that runs into like, ouch, of 4 tricky knights. Yikes, that hurts. That hurts. Knight, says the knight. And then let's go back. Okay, and after here we have king e7. After you actually could check, but you could do literally the same thing. That's so cool. Like when do you ever have a game like that where you could do this both ways? That's insane, absolutely insane. But after king to f6, which is the game move, instead of knight takes f5, king f6, there was knight e5 anyway. g4, g5 looks like a thing. Knight g4 looks like a thing. It's getting scary through here. So knight to c6, and finally Leela Chess Zero is able to trade a piece or two. Like, man, thank you for getting rid of these knight. These pieces are annoying. Knight takes, bishop takes, and rook to c4. Shut the door here. We're going to pin him. Pin to win, right? Pin to win. Rook c4, and then rook to e8. It's just trying to do what we can, trying to hold these pawns off. We're literally on the defense, says Black. Leela Chess Zero here. Bishop g2, and what do? This pawn or this bishop is actually, you can call it a pawn at this point. It's not able to move. But this bishop here is pinned down, and if you take on g2, then this should be decisive, because now not only do we have the 4 pawns, and they're passed, looking great, rook on a 7th rank, we're taking everything. So after bishop g2, knight d8, once again, just to defend, then we play g4. Uh-oh, this is looking very scary. Connected pawn chain, 2 passed pawns. This is weak. Piece is passive, right? It may make you think twice about that con Sicilian in the beginning. g4, rook e to e7, defending the undefended rook. Bishop to f1, saying, all right, you know what? We don't want to trade just yet. Not just yet. Not just yet. So bishop f1, step out the way. Have a nice day. Bishop e8, of course, and after bishop e8, then we have a rook to d4 attacking the knight. Keep the attacks up. Rook to c8, bishop takes a6. That's another pawn. Oh my goodness, right? That's another pawn. Leela Chess Zero is like, yo, give me my pawns back. Yo, don't show anyone this video. All of you guys are watching it. But I'm missing all of my pawns. Bishop takes a6, knight to c6, and says, take it. You take mine, I take yours. We need to do something. c2 will be hanging, and we have knight f3. But he says rook to d5 instead. Still hitting a6, threatening stuff like g5 as well. rook a8 and bishop to d3, defending f5, so we can get g5 in. Now, we were thinking, what happens on rook takes a2? What do you do? Well, let's see it. If rook takes a2, actually, there's actually a weird line here that takes some time to figure this out. It's not the easiest because humans would take on a2 here, threatening rook takes b2 as well, trying to get some of that material back. I mean, have you ever been down 4 or 5 pawns, right? It's very rare that you can be down that many pawns and still survive. So king h2, rook a5, and then after rook takes, knight takes, we play king g3, king to g5, and rook to f1 here. And this is really it. We have f6, f7 coming. Of course, knight c6. You have f6 and f7, and feeling great about this position. Rook f5 still a thing. So white's just winning. White's just winning. It takes a little bit longer, but white is definitely winning. Knight to c6, rook d5, rook a8, bishop d3 defending. And instead of taking the pawn, in fact, black just says, no, we don't want to do any of that. I need a square for my king, or at least knight e7. Rook e7, well, e7 anyway, threatening rook e6. I mean, threatening g5 still. There's so much to it. Rook takes e7, and here we go. White to move. White to move. I want you to finish this one. What you going to do? Here we go. Here we go. Rook takes e7 and g5. And we live. That's g5 check. Flex real hard. You got 2 moves. You can take it or play king f7. Let's look at king f7 first. If king f7, we got rook takes e7, knight takes, because you're attacking the rook, why not? And then rook to d4 here. Strong move, hitting the b4 pawn. If knight to c6, of course, going back to defend it at the same time. Well, then we have g6 check. And look at both of these pawns about to do some nasty stuff here. This is gross. Absolutely gross. Not a move. It's not winning at all. So after g5 check, there was king takes g5, which was the move chosen in the game. And then we have f6 check, which is really cool here. Cool move, sweet tactic with a follow-up, because after f6 check, if there's king takes, watch this, rook f5, and we live. King g6, and then rook takes, knight takes, and discover check. Where are we moving it, guys? Where are you going to move it? Find the best piece that you can take with this discovery. You could go rook d4 or rook e5, but you can go king f6. You can go rook f8, but you're not taking anything. In fact, it's rook a5, and we live. Very simple, guys. Rook takes a5. I mean, rook to a5, and then rook takes a8 after king takes h6. So after f6 check, in fact, there was just a rook to e5 instead. He was like, you know what? Hey, look, first off, I'm in check. I got to do something. Secondly, if I take, I run into that line we just looked at. Rook takes, rook a5, discovery, taking that one. So, and I'm going to lose this rook if I don't move it, right? So he played rook e5. Leela Chess played rook e5, which is just, it's a logical move. It makes sense. Rook e5, rook d takes e5, knight takes, rook takes, and then king takes h6 instead of king takes f6. But let's see what happened. King takes, rook e7. Now, if you look at this, honestly, we're winning all of that, right? Those 4 pawns helped out. It's actually, what, 4 pawns here now to 2? Yeah, white's up 2 pawns, but look at the position. I mean, this is a move here, and then we're going to go into a winning rook endgame if we trade the bishops, which exactly what happened. Bishop g6, we take, and then f7, rook f8, king g2, king g7, and honestly, guys, we're just going to fast forward here because the rest is technique. King h3, king g6, rook takes b4. Very simple here. This should be an easy endgame, even for a beginner like some of you. It'd be simple. Very, very simple here. King e6, right? Rook to b5, and then king takes a4. And that's a wrap. We're going to queen. We're going to go queen this pawn. King here. Very surprising that, rook takes didn't happen. I mean, super surprising. But you always see surprising stuff from engines. So king d5, a6, check. Still didn't capture it. I mean, very strange, right? That's engine for you. a7, king d4, king f4. Rook a5 and rook a3. There's no way you're stopping this queen. That's it. I mean, he could have stopped it two other moves, but it's still a losing in game with I mean, you're down 3 pawns here with nothing else on the board, right? There's nothing. It's not going to work out. So let's see what happened. Few more moves. Queen c8, rook c5, rook a4 check, king d5, and can you find the mate and we grade anyone? Where is it? Where is it? Here it is. You ready? Queen d7 mate. And we great. That's a GG. That's a good game. Another one from Stockfish here. I hope you guys enjoyed today's game of the day. I'm National Master James Canty III here with Chess.com, and I'll see you guys on the next video.